very surface, and especially in this first book. And I've heard that the series gets better. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a genre that I think at one point we've probably all read. This is going to be girl detective series. And I was going to be the first to admit that I had not read Nancy Drew because I did not grow up with it. I read Trixie Belden, which is another lesser known girl detective, but I had heard all about Nancy Drew and how, oh, you have to read Nancy Drew, her books are so good, and it's very, very similar kind of idea of a girl detective. And I'm gonna just say that I read 3 girl detective books. They're all a little bit different, and I'm gonna go over kind of the pros and cons of which ones I liked, they're all enjoyable enough. There wasn't like super bored with any of them. But I will say some of them are definitely better, in my opinion. So let's start out with the most well-known and one that I had just read recently. That's Nancy Drew. So Nancy Drew is 18 years old. She is blonde hair, blue-eyed girl with a blue convertible. She comes from a wealthy family and she has a single dad. So her mom died and her dad is a lawyer, and she helps him in his law practice, and that's how she kind of gets her mystery assignments, kind of, if you're going to put it that way. So these books were originally published in, the first book anyway, in 1930, the first few books of the series. So they had a rewrite done in 1959 to update the books. They changed her age, made her, in the original book she was 16, they made her 18. They changed a lot of things as far as like her character was a lot nicer. I will say Nancy Drew in the first book is like very nice. She's almost sugary sweet in her attitude towards others, except for the bad guys. But she's very like helpful and just a model citizen, very like wanting to help everybody and be just a really sweet girl. And she's not super relatable, I will say, because of that. We also get a lot of things of like, she walked out to her car wearing a lovely tan sweater set, and it seems very much added in that they wanted to make her very fashionable, and it just doesn't flow very well. This story is the most, I would say, juvenile in its writing. It's very much Nancy went and did this and did this and did this, and like the writing to me didn't flow very well. It felt piecey, and I think it might have been because of the rewrite. I have not read the original. This is the 1959 rewrite version. So yeah, she is, adults are pretty useless in this world. She does everything, and in this first book, she doesn't have any friends. And she doesn't have any helpers. Like most of the other stories I'm going to talk about, there's very dedicated friends and people who help in all the adventures. But Nancy's pretty much in it for herself in this one. And yeah, this book didn't really work for me. I have heard that the books in the series get more suspenseful and better. This book deals with a missing will, missing, that's what I should say. But it's all of these first books for each of these series, which I'm going over, which will be Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden, and then the Mandie series. They all deal with an inheritance or will situation. I don't know if that's by design, like your first book in a mystery series has to be about a missing will or some kind of inheritance issue, but that's what these all kind of focus on in the first book. And I will say that Nancy Drew was my least favorite of the 3 girl detective books I read. Not that there was anything particularly wrong with the story or anything. It was just very simple. She had very obvious motivations. She's very helpful. There's these people who are really in need of money, and she wants to make sure that they get this inheritance money. And she's nice. There's nothing wrong with her, but you don't get a lot of character development, and you don't get a lot of interesting aspects of her character because she doesn't interact with anybody. She's just doing her girl detective thing, and in my opinion, for the first book, it really hurt her character in that she just wasn't that interesting. I will read other books in the series, and if you have a favorite, let me know. But, you know, she doesn't have a boyfriend. She doesn't have friends. There's like an acquaintance that comes in at one point, but it's just very, very simple. And it's not really a mystery in my opinion. It's a find the thing that's missing. So there's not a lot of suspense. She's not really in any real danger ever. There's, you know, maybe a kind of a semi-scary moment. And this book doesn't deal with hardly any tough issues. There's very briefly touched on that there may have been some neglect or, you know, things that have happened to people that wasn't right, but it's not dealing with any kind of hard issues. So that's what I'll say about this one for now. That's Nancy Drew. Like I said, she's the oldest of our girl detectives at 18. She's wealthy and independent, and, you know, she's on the case. Like I don't feel like an extra from Stranger Things wearing this top right now, but sorry, that's off topic. So wrapping up Nancy Drew. There were, like, these books were written from, like, they're still being, I think they just recently redid the series or something, but there's 175 books in this original series, I believe, at least. They kept writing it, and publishers kept picking up. So I don't know if you would say the original series was just what was originally published with the original publisher or what, because it's kind of hard because this series has been redone, and then there was a spin-off series of Nancy Drew recently. So she's a very well-known, well-beloved heroine, and a lot of books in this series. So that's Nancy Drew. So the next girl detective is Trixie Belden. And Trixie Belden is described as a 13-year-old tomboy with sandy-colored curly hair. Short, sandy-colored curly hair. Man, it's hard for me to get that description out for some reason. And unlike our Nancy, she has a big family, which would have been much more common. These books were written in 1948, and it would have been much more common for her to have a big family than to have a single dad like Nancy Drew, which is kind of weird. It's just very unusual for that time. I mean, obviously if her mom died, it's not her fault, but it's kind of a weird setup because Trixie has a large family. She has 3 brothers. Her parents are very much a part of the story, and she's very interactive with her siblings in the books, especially in the later books. I grew up reading Trixie Belden, so I am totally biased in my appreciation for Trixie Belden. I will just put that right out there. I didn't grow up with Nancy Drew. I grew up with Trixie Belden. These are the books my mom read as a young girl, and so these are the ones I read. I like that Trixie is definitely not perfect. She's 13. She says things without thinking, and she is very impulsive. And she gets into trouble. She gets hurt. I mean, things happen that are very negative. She's not just wandering down finding all the things that she needs and things falling perfectly into place. Also, she has a best friend that you meet in the first book named Honey, and another friend named Jim, who will later become a friend / kind of love interest. There's not really like a lot of romance, but she does have a boyfriend, technically. So Honey is a wealthy girl that lives next door. I will say Trixie is not wealthy. They're very much middle class. And her friend Honey is very wealthy, and they show that her parents have neglected her because they've basically not known how to take care of her. She's been sent to camps and had governesses and been taken care of her whole life, and she got very sick, so they're finally paying a lot of attention to her, and they brought her out to the country to kind of improve her health. So that's her best friend. They have a pretty good contrast of personality, but they're very, like, they love each other. They're very good friends, and it's nice because you have that camaraderie, and they support each other in, like, the mystery and the solving of mysteries. So there's also Jim, who factors in, of course, much later in the story. And later in the stories, there's a whole group of friends that are always involved in the mysteries. There's her brothers, the 2 older ones, and their friends. And it's just kind of like this whole little mystery solving group. And she's the star, but she has support. And I like that because it's, you know, I'm from a family of 5. So I like the whole, like, family, you know, brothers and sisters working together, and that they all, you know, kind of have to get along, and you see that dynamic. The other thing that is different from Nancy and Trixie is that these names. The book deals with very difficult situations. Like, Jim is running away from his stepfather who abuses him. This is not shied away from. Like, he says he beats me. Like, it's very much talked about. This is, for that time, I felt pretty a pretty good representation, you know, of like kids who are neglected or abused. Like, this isn't shying away from telling a sad story and, you know, something that, you know, it's going to end up having a very happy ending, but at least it's in there. This also has a lot more suspense. There's a plane crash, there's a fire, there's a wild dog. So if you're sensitive to animals being killed, it's not graphic, but that does happen, and, you know, it's like a rabid dog, so kind of thing. There's a snake bite. Things happen. It's a very much like a suspenseful, I wouldn't say that it's super suspenseful and like the mystery part of it, but it's a lot of action versus Nancy, that's pretty meandering story in my opinion. So that's Trixie. I really like this story. I think it's fun. I like the friendship aspects of it. I like that she's not a go it alone type of person. And then you have, I'm only including this because I also read this series when I was younger. It's not technically in the whole girl detective series, but I read these. Oh, and also Trixie had 39 books, so not anywhere near as many as Nancy Drew, although in my opinion it is a better series. So this is Mandie, and Mandie is a quarter Cherokee girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. This was written in 1983, so I'm not going to give it a total pass on this kind of stuff, but it was written in 1983, so. Anyway, she is a young girl whose father has just died. This happens in the very first page of the book. You know this. And she is pretty much not in a good place as far as her home life. Her mom neglects her. She's not very well loved. She has one adult friend who's actually an Indian that comes and checks in on her, and he was a friend of her father, so they have this connection where he is helping her. She goes eventually to find her uncle to help her and find somewhere to live, and there's a whole mystery surrounding where his will is, because something happens with him, and, you know, they're trying to figure out if she's actually his heir, all this stuff. So that's Mandie. Mandie is set in 1900, so this is set in a time where there are Indians and also where the servants are black. So it's representative of the time. If that bothers you, you know, that there's going to be that kind of stereotype, I guess. I didn't feel like the characters had very heavy racial stereotypes, but, you know, it is written in 1983, so take that for what you will. It's maybe not the best. But these are also Christian fiction. It's not super heavily like mentioned, but she has friends. Her best friend is Jo, who also is the love interest, and she has a friend named Polly who helps her with her adventures. She's very much reliant on her friends, and that's nice. They have a good group. And the group expands into several people as the books go on. There are, how many books? 40, I believe. 40 books in this series, and unlike Nancy and Trixie, Mandie ages. So we actually see her at the beginning of her school to the end of her schooling. The last book is a graduation. So Mandie turns 12 in the first book. So she starts out pretty young. She's obviously taken a lot more seriously than you would think a 12-year-old would be. Same with Trixie, but they are fun stories. I would say it's also not very suspenseful, not really a mystery. It's kind of just a fun introduction to the characters. You get to see, there's a lot of drama. A missing will, a missing heir, you know, things are happening. There's secret tunnels. Obviously, that's the name of the book. There's family secrets and lies and hidden things. So it's got the drama of it. It's just not really technically a mystery. So those are the 3 girl detective series that I am familiar with. I'm sure there are more, and I will read Hardy Boys eventually. Let me check my notes. Oh, and I do think, too, Mandie does deal more with some, like, there are some harder life issues in here as far as her being neglected. She's sent away at one point to go work for another family because her mom doesn't want her anymore. And then she finds out a lot of family secrets and things, and it's not super heavy, but it's there. Whereas Nancy, there's not really anything heavy in that first book. So I will say in my ranking, it would be Trixie, then Mandie, then Nancy. And if I read all the Nancy Drew books, I might have a different opinion. I will definitely do that. I just wanted to contrast the very first books And I will say with the Trixie Belden book, this ends on a cliffhanger. So it leads into the next book. So this has a lot of suspense, and it goes, you know, basically right into the next book, which is clever. Instead of wrapping up kind of the way that these two do, where, you know, it's a little bit like, well, you don't have to read the next book. I mean, they found everything out. With Trixie, you kind of want to see what's happening next because it's a cliffhanger ending. Technically. Not, I mean, like, they solve the mystery, but there's something that they need to do in the next book. So, yeah, if you enjoy mysteries, I would say these aren't really mysteries. There's not, like, a lot of sleuthing needed. But they're fun. They're cute. It is hard because these are older books. So they're very representative of their times. The reason that Nancy Drew, in fact, was rewritten in 1959 from the 1930 version, one of them being that there was a African-American character that was portrayed pretty badly. And so in a way, good that they changed it, but in another way, they just erased the character. So it almost feels like they just didn't want to have that character in there. Not that they knew that it was bad that they had portrayed him a certain way. So take that for what you will. I do think all the books could be interesting for a young girl. I would say these are like, you know, ages 7 to maybe 13. These are definitely middle grade, and I think they're fun. But I will say don't like go into it thinking these are going to be super suspenseful. I think it does show girls, like at least the Trixie and Mandie series are like, yeah, camaraderie. And although none of them are real quick to immediately go to the police, at least most of the time they do. Probably they should more often, so it's a little bit like, yeah, who needs adults? Who needs the police? But, I mean, I guess, like, you know, in situations where you're dealing with wills, it's a little bit different than, like, a dead body, and just in my opinion. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about these Girl Detective series. And if you've read Nancy Drew or any of these, let me know if you have a favorite. Like I said, definitely do. I just have a soft spot for Trixie. I like that she's a tomboy. I like that she's a farm girl. She's very much like the rural thing. I will say one thing very heavily talked about in Nancy Drew and Trixie is the idea of camps, which I'm assuming were very big in that time. They go to summer camps, and especially in Trixie, like outdoor knowledge and first aid and all that is very heavily referenced. These kids just know this stuff. So very different from our world today. These are people outdoors doing things, hiking, getting out there. So that's good, at least to read about, even if we're not going to do it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have a favorite detective. It doesn't need to be a girl or boy, whoever. And let me know if you have a favorite mystery series. Talk to me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.